Alright, hello and welcome to Sonic Frontiers, where in this video I shall be taking on a challenge you all have, you might have seen. It's possible. The No Boost Challenge. Now, as very few of you know, like one or two, this is a game I only own on Xbox. Which, yes, means that I have further access to games. This does mean that I can take on suggestions I otherwise couldn't. More so relating to the end of Switch and Xbox games, because I don't own a PlayStation. But I think it's more important to focus on this video, in which I'll immediately start by diving into the rules. For Rule 1, obviously, any action that triggers the boost gauge to appear on screen is forbidden. That encompasses the boost button, obviously, as well as the spin dash move for any completion of challenges. This means I can't use it within levels, I can't use it to beat challenges just on the overworld. Rule 2, I will have to complete the game in hard mode, which gives the enemies extra HP and attack. As for Rule 3, I have also decided to ban fishing because it just allows you to max out your stats on Island 1. Well, not really, but you get a lot farther ahead if you just immediately go for fishing.
You tracked the Chaos Emeralds here, right? Let's find out what drew them here.
But I do believe that covers the basic rules. No using the boost gauge, must be played in hard mode, and no fishing. So we'll just wait for Tails to crash into the portal, and we'll dive right into how this will actually be played. Alright, so diving right into 1-1. The moveset we're going to have access to inside of levels is going to be related to the drop dash and the light dash. The light dash is a move you can only use whenever nearby a set of rings, in which Sonic will instantly go down the line of rings in the path they're formatted in. This is based on Sonic's initial direction though, so it can be taken horizontally even if the line is straight forward. As for the drop dash, it is a move you can only use after double jumping and then holding the A button. Meaning if, say, I want to use it after attacking an enemy, it's better to use a stomp to immediately hit the ground and do a double dash into a drop dash. Drop dash has a couple of technical abilities I'll be able to use it for later, but for now, it's time to discuss the overworld. Now, the majority of the overworld is actually very simple, since you don't really need to be boosting to get around the place. Aside from a couple memory tokens being inaccessible, it is still plenty feasible to get all the memory tokens you need, especially on the first island. Now, in order to get the amount of keys for all your Chaos Emeralds, you're going to need to complete 2 to 3 different levels if you get all the keys in every level. And while I will be showing the S ranks for every level that I found that I could feasibly complete, as well as some of the challenges I ended up choosing to do, I will not go through how to collect, say, the red rings for every level. And the gold completion you'll just see in the fastest, and overall, if you're going fast, you're also holding on to your rings. So, more often than not, the S ranks will also have variable other challenges completed at the same time. The only other one that might have been noteworthy is that the red rings can sometimes have multiple routes, and by going for a red ring, you may not be taking the fastest route. Or in the case of one specific level, you might not be able to complete the level at all. As for boss fights, most of them will remain relatively the same. The overworld bosses just tend to not have a need for boosting, while the Raven does technically have a desire to use the boost. I did not personally have to fight it, so I cannot say whether it is absolutely needed to take it on. But that just goes to show how forgiving this game is for its requirements. As for the challenges you'll tend to face in this game, you'll likely run into your panel puzzles, which require you to hit all the panels and turn them all to black without leaving a single one active. You cannot go back to black platforms because that'll fail the challenge and you'll have to restart. Then you got your dodge panels, which certain panels will light up green and you'll be required to dodge to the left or the right in order to actually get between them. You have your treadmills, or hamster wheels, I'm going to go ahead and call them, which you would just have to fill up a speed bar in a fast enough time frame. In addition, you also have your time challenges where you have to hit a button within a specific time frame, just as the one I did there. You also have your puzzles, which aren't really affected, such as the order pieces, where you have your varied number of colored pieces in which you have to find the proper assortment in order to copy over what you're looking at. Those ones remain relatively unchanged and are not very important. The ring puzzles are the same, where you just have to side loop a pedestal where it then summons a spear where you have to hit the spear into multiple rings. It does not technically get affected in any way by the challenge, so aside from a couple just to break up the dreaded levels that I do show, or just something to extend the runtime, I won't likely be bringing them up too often. Now, given how most of the challenges are child's play until you get to the alternate story mode, because I also am curious as to how much of that can be completed. Most of the challenges are, well, all the challenges are easily completable. I did not have a single challenge, aside from the ones where I was just straight up messing around, come even close, and I had plenty of time to deal with them afterwards. As for the story missions, they also don't require any boosting, but I will show a couple of them just for the sake of showing them. Most of them aren't puzzles, and they explain how to beat them in the first place, but they are not all that important. Rails are going to be important for us since they do give you a higher base speed than your just base running speed. Especially if you, say, drop dash and then get onto one. Because it keeps your speed for the most part until it lowers back down to a set rate. Now the set rate can be higher or lower than your base running speed, but until you ride it, it's unclear. As for those hamster wheels I mentioned, most of them, well, actually all of them, can be completed without even boosting once, and it's not even close. Even the one on the last island still gave me like 15 seconds to fill up the bar without a single boost. So I do not think I'll be showing any more of those. As for these torchlight puzzles, most of them aren't really about pressuring you to finish them quickly, so you can more often than not get away with just looking around and making sure you know where you're going next. And this is the first of the first island Coco minigames, where you get rewarded with a Chaos Emerald, and here's the second. As you can see, I sped them up because most of them are uninteresting to watch, but as you can see, no boosting. And then we'll dive straight into 1-30. This level is based in a metropolis type zone, or type sector of the I forget its name. Was it the... Anyway, this level overall is not a difficult one to S-rank, so long as you don't stop move. As you can see, I'm at about 30 seconds, and I'd say I'm roughly at about the halfway point. Now, S-ranks for Sonic Frontiers vary in difficulty from outright Child's Play, where you have entire minutes to spare in order to continue to mess up, even without boosting. And others, you have to play literally perfectly in order to achieve in no boosting. As you may have noticed, I did not S-rank 1-1. That is because I will be coming back to it later on with a bit of tech for it. Now, as you can see on screen, I am also speeding up the Titan battles because this first version is just a slog of me using up a whole lot of time. This is where the hard difficulty actually comes back to bite me, because the Titans also get the HP boost, and while they don't technically make me lose the rings, their quick times are a lot harder. So much harder, in fact, I actually end up just deciding later on to tank Giganto attacks in the Master Trial. But overall, the first island is still the first island, so no immediate challenges. And an overall, what seems to be easy run for the challenge. Now, if you're wondering why I have so many of the challenges inside, it is because I ended up trying to complete all of the map before I went to do any levels in the game. This is because I prefer having the ability to fast travel between the portals, and that overall makes the gameplay a lot simpler just on the overworld part to me. Especially since most of the time the challenges are close to each other. Also, don't worry about the max ring boost animation showing up. I do figure out how to turn it off. Not to mention, I do believe I end up skipping over that most of the time it does pop up. Now, for this challenge here, it's a time challenge, as you probably noticed. And surely I should not make it because I have just wasted so much time. But, well, let me just do a couple drop dashes over here. And with less than half a second to spare, despite wasting easily half of the timer, I made it. This here is 1-4, obviously mimicking a green hill. Most of its terrain is related to just flying through the sky, as you probably noticed. Well, most of this game is all about going fast, so most of your tactics for going fast are going to be in the air. Rails are your friend in a no boost, and you do not want to take the bottom path, as I personally believe it is harder. Well, you might end up choosing to take the bottom path if you believe it's easier, but I personally find it harder, especially with the no boosting. And overall, it's just less thought to take the top path. I will note that you do not want to use drop dashes excessively on 2D level, or 2D looking levels, as more often than not, drop dashes end up getting halted very quickly for whatever reason. Like, friction is turned up to 11. But as you can see, with the proper strategy, you can easily make it within S rank time. And this here is a Strider. Now, this one actually does directly benefit from boosting, as it allows you to shorten the attack phases. So instead of boosting, I just figured out how to one-cycle the boss. And easy as that. Just cycling between attacking normally and stomps, because stomp is OP. Alright, I do believe this next one is... Oh wait, the last one was 2-1. I believe this one is 2-2. I'll probably double check that. Put it on screen if it is. But anyway. This level is full of rotating platforms, which do affect your momentum. Now here, I thought I was gonna die, because, you know, I was literally on top of the spike bar going around. But I managed to recover. No big issues yet. Couple homing attacks, stomp, run into booster. Then, 43-second time. Seems pretty good to me. And the game would agree. Oh yeah, I left the thing on top of the results screen so you guys could see that I completed all the other, or it doesn't really always show that I completed all of the quests because, or objectives, because I do end up taking them on separate attempts just so I could more so focus on the given tasks. For example, S ranking, I'll have to likely ignore some rings and red rings in order to actually make it. This here is 2-3. This level is filled with a lot of twists and turns, so taking the aerial routes does overall just simplify your travel. Rails are, again, always your best friend. And it almost looks like I'm not even doing a new boost run. Especially towards the end there. But yeah, that's 2-3. And I believe I might have taken down 2-4, yes. Keep in mind, I will show all the levels later on, but I did not do all the levels right now. There is 6 levels in the first island, 7 levels in the second island, I believe. 7... no, I believe it's 7 or 8 in the third island, and 8 in the fourth island. If I'm recalling correctly, I will double check and put it on screen. As you can see, this level is relatively easy to actually just do every mission on the first go-through. You can always just reset until you can, but this only took me a couple of tries. So next I'll go ahead and go over the scripted wyvern chase because, well, I figured it'd be interesting just to say that the missiles that actually attack you here don't really do anything. A couple look like they're going to hit you. I don't believe any of them actually have an active hitbox. And neither do their explosions. Now you definitely want to collect the rings just because it'll make your overworld a lot easier. But overall, it does not affect the base gameplay. You will not get stuck on this chase unless you just absolutely fumble your dodges. Which, when running forward at a constant pace, will actually cause you to switch lanes. But after that's done, we'll head over to the interesting Coco minigame of the island, where you have to take down 4 of the tower mini-bosses before time runs out. You get a minute, which roughly equates to 15 seconds per tower that you can spend. Now, I do waste a fair bit of that time just overall not dodging the attacks, meaning I have to wait for recovery. Taking 3 hits or otherwise running out of time, you will fail the mission and have to retry, but you do get infinite attempts. That was the hardest challenge so far, but there was nothing else of interest, so I'll skip straight to the wyvern battle. Now this battle does have a bit of a trickier experience because most of the time when you go to parry on the second phase for Psyloop, you'll end up being hit by the tail because it has a very delayed actual attack. Now I don't deal with that on this because by the time I'm getting to it, I've already lowered its health enough to just brute force my way to the quick time events, which allow you more free hits. And by that point, you'll just deal with this quick time, which switches into the missile, into a mashing, where if you fail, you just go back like you see here. And then after another successful parry on the missile and 2 claw attacks, you'll be able to tear open this thing's mouth and watch as it gets blown up from the inside. Anyway, I also forgot to mention the parry machines. Yeah, they're not of interest, but the parry is. Damage dummies also aren't a problem, even with my low attack stat. This one only requires 150, and with a 94, 95, oh, almost 116 combo, I deal 901. Which I don't know the exact math on that, and I'm not going to bother pulling out a calculator for it. Then you got these gate mini games where you have to go through the individual little digital gates in order to complete the puzzle. They do have an intended order, and going out of order will cause them to despawn. Most of these ones are also easily forgettable and don't need to be mentioned. Now this skydiving section actually does need to be mentioned, because if you watch the other person who did a no boost run of the game, you'll know that this is actually really tight timing. Now, I did learn that you can stomp if you homing attack an enemy, which allows you to get away scot-free, kind of, and get down a little bit faster for a little while. That's actually why I managed to succeed on this attempt, because otherwise I would not have had the time. I would have used another stomp there, but I mistimed the double jump and had RA entered the skydiving again. Now, some of these boost rings are unnecessarily long, I noticed, which does cause me some stress, but you guys didn't have to worry about that. Because this is post-recording voiceover. Anyway, after that's done and over with, I can actually finish the pinball minigame and get to the night. Now, if you're wondering about the night chase, I did throw a valiant effort at it, but I was not able to beat that without boosting. I do believe that there is a check run with the saw blade that if you aren't boosting, you will be hit and you will die. No matter your ring count, there is no avoiding that. But even if you could dodge the saw, you'd still not be near fast enough to keep pace with the Raven Trail until the end of the chase. And there is no cheesing this either, at least not in the base new game, which I'm playing on. You might be able to use a spin dash or something to cheese it, but that'd just be lessening the amount I'm cheating, rather than not boosting. Now, I do learn that the knight can both parry and you can fail the saw blade by just charging him head on. But once I get to here, the knight was basically doomed. Aside from a couple cheap shots, I basically murderize it. Then another mashing game, which leads into the final cutscene, where you just knock the sword straight out of its hand. So I loop it and, well, I'll just show you. Yeah, you just straight up slice the knight in half with its own sword. But that brings me to the 6 towers before you get to the final island of the game. For the most part, I keep these unsped up just because I had expected them to be more of a challenge. But this first tower is mostly filled with springs and platforms to run on. Neither of which particularly pose a threat to a non-boosting Sonic. As I said, the first tower was easy, and the second one is more rail-based, which actually does limit my movement options. aka I cannot use a drop dash on the rails, as if you jump off a rail, it takes a bit of time before you can actually use your double jump and henceforth your drop dash. As for this moment, nothing has made me use a single boost yet aside from the Night Chase. And unfortunately, the Night Chase is a scripted event and story related, so you can't dodge it in hopes of making a zero boost Sonic Frontiers unless there is a glitch that allows you to just escape the area without following the Raven's path, which would have to be completed straight off the small starting area you get. But yeah, the second tower actually does pose a bit too much of a problem, as while it is in fact possible to get to this rail over here, even if you do get past it, the second jump here is just not possible. You can get within a double jump's reach of it, but by then you have already used up your double jump. And you cannot cycle between a boost panel in order to improve your speed, you just have minimal speed. So I finish off the tower mostly with a easy mode, and then the third tower is intriguing, especially after that. So I will count easier difficulties as a boost, because obviously just switching modes still breaks the rules, and it's a lot easier to keep track of just a boost counter rather than a boost and easy mode counter, especially since I use them intermittently. So after failing, I get back up. Yeah. I'm not going to completely hide my mistakes. But if you're wondering what I have been doing when I do boost by mistake, because unlike most PC games, you can't rebind your controls for Sonic Frontiers on the Xbox version, so I couldn't get rid of the boost button functionality. Instead, whenever I'd use a boost, I'd just drop back to the previous location where I was able to reach without it, if it ended up benefiting me to use a boost. That way I'd still be able to keep entire honesty if on whether or not I could complete a challenge without a boost. Now, this tower is another relatively streamlined one. While it does include more combat, it's easy combat that makes the path not really skill-based. And with homing attacks, you don't really have to worry about reaching springs naturally. I do suppose I'll go ahead and tell you that no enemy in the game strictly requires boosting to defeat. Like, there's an enemy that requires you to guard against it in order to actually do any damage to the enemy, but there is no enemy that requires you to boost against it. Not even the gem thieves. As expected, for a no boost run, most of the gameplay is relatively slow. But I don't want to just zip past everything. I want to give you guys some time to watch some of my horror gameplay. Another umbrella bot. I don't actually know the name of this guy. I just know he annoys me because he locks my camera anytime I walk past him on the second island. And yes, I do remember earlier where I called the next island the fourth island, but I more so just forget about this island with the towers on it, as it has never really stood out as important to me, despite it literally being part of the reason the final island even can happen. But this last tower, I believe this is the last tower, I lost count. Either way, this tower is also interesting. You get way too many springs and boost panels to actually help you. Rails making it essentially thoughtless to travel upwards. And you get essentially infinite time to actually complete it. This tower is a wall-based one, as you probably noticed. And walls don't require use of the boost button, and technically don't engage your boost gauge. So I could walk on the wall if I wanted to. But I found it more controlled to just climb. Anyways, I have neglected to mention the jump rope things, but that's because I found out that you can just cheese the entire challenge by holding a parry in the center of the area. Even if you do the one on the alt story, you can just hold the parry, and whenever it naturally breaks because you've been parrying too long, you can actually just start a new one before you even hit the ground. So you can chain parries as long as you want to maintain your height. But you cannot really use that height to your advantage, since after a block you start falling like a rock. Because in Sonic Frontiers, gravity is applied to you constantly as long as you're in the air. So even though you aren't physically falling down, as soon as you've been parrying in the air long enough, eventually gravity will be weighing so heavily on you that you'll fall before you can actually do anything else. But usually if you parry 1 to 2 times, you'll have enough air time to gather your thoughts and figure out where you're going. As you can see, I tried to use a parry there to see about going up an extra level, but I ended up being unable to and ended up having to just climb the pillar normally. Now this actually does skip a bit of the intended route, but I make up for that by wasting an entire 20 seconds here. Because it actually requires a somewhat precise double jump in order to make it, and as soon as I hit the button, we'll jump into the first level of the 4th island. This level is overall not a difficult one. Enemies are rather rare, but your homing attacks are used quite often for overall leverage. Light dashing has become more apparent in these later levels, especially for forward momentum into boost panels, which allows me to maintain very fast speeds with minimal effort. And then after this level, I do believe I go straight into 4-2 and 4-3. Gliders aren't really important to the challenge since they show up so rarely, so I didn't mention them earlier. They're essentially just like rails, but even more restrictive of your movement. Overall, the levels that just give you a whole bunch of things that automatically set your speed to a high value are relatively unchanged with the boost being removed from your arsenal. In fact, there's only one level in the entire game that actually forces you to use any boost in order to complete it, and even that level can be technically completed, although not to full completion without boosting. This level does make another appearance in the harder version in the alt story, where it, well, actually, the alt story levels are a special case I'll go over later. This level is actually one of the tighter timed levels, with an overall time of 1:15, I believe it was. Yes, 1:15 is your S-rank time. And while that seems quite generous given that I had an entire 5 seconds left, it's actually rather tight, as if you mess anything up there, you'll probably lose that 5 seconds. As for the gem stealers, I did end up fumbling and getting one of my emeralds stolen, but luckily, this game is so easy that I don't even have to use the game's intended gimmick for this guy in order to actually catch him. And then I just get my emerald back. Aside from that, there wasn't any interesting overworld things. This level is pretty well just formally routed. There isn't much variance you can add to it. Like, yes, you can take an alternate rail route, but it's not going to affect your speed too much. The alternate version of this level adds a couple mines here and there and removes the basic paths, forcing you to jump over the bottomless void. Aside from that, this level doesn't really have anything of importance. Red rings were easily obtained, and you get more than enough regular rings without boosting to complete that as well. As you've probably noticed, I'm not making any particularly strong mentions of memorable red rings or anything like that, because we haven't really been talking about hard levels here. While some of them look interesting, they don't really have any technical difficulties I faced during my time playing through them. I'd occasionally have to do a couple of resets for a level or two, especially when I was going for full completion of the level. But nothing really stuck out in any of these levels, especially not yet. And we're already on the last world. I will say from this level and onward, I had pretty much already decided what I figured the two hardest levels would be. I couldn't really decide on a third, and I didn't really count the alt story mode because of a stipulation I'll get into when I actually get to the alt story. Anyway, with enough levels completed to get the Chaos Emeralds, and Chaos Emeralds all not needing even the slightest hint of boosting, we face down Supreme, leading to the end. Both of which I am speeding up for your sakes, because as you can see, I am just getting absolutely hammered. Because I do not understand this boss in the slightest. Eventually, I do actually get hit by the correct attack. In which I have found the easiest way to consistently trigger is to destroy one of the tower, or one of the diamond things. And from there, you can take Supreme down no problem. Now, I don't know if you're supposed to have a hard time parrying the initial attack, or if you're supposed to intentionally get hit by the first attack to trigger the second attack to parry in order to actually parry the attack. I understand that was a bit of a confusing way to say it, but I couldn't really put it into any other words. As for the final boss fight, the end, it's just a space shooter game. So let's dive back into a couple of levels. Now, 1-1, which is obviously your Green Hill zone of the game, it actually has a immediate sneaky trick that you all just saw right there, where instead of following the loop, you run off the ledge and then pull a nasty right turn that flies you directly onto the ramp. From there, you'll skip over the last Badnik and the first Badnik of the area in order to secure yourself a fast run. From there, your time should more or less be set in stone. I had a healthy second before I'd lose the S rank here. 1-2 was not completed immediately after this. From here, I jumped straight to 1-4, as I am showing this as I completed S ranks for the levels. I ended up getting about 20 hours of recording for 1-2 for one S rank. So that one comes quite a bit later. As for 1-4, most of it is related to rails, so as you'd expect, most of it can't be made any faster without boosting. Which, luckily, it is unnecessary to boost because it already sets your speed pretty high on these rails. And just following the middle rail really makes you fast enough to complete it. Now, I will say that you can absolutely fumble the S ring, especially on these flat areas, but you do have a fair bit of time to actually complete it. As this is another level with 115 as the goal to beat. After that, we dive right into the next World 1 level. Which, while I do immediately fumble, I don't really reset this level, because this is one of those levels where you have a generous amount of time to actually make it, especially if you follow the correct routing. Couple light dashes here and there to replace the boosting you're probably expected to use. I can't really say for sure. All I know is that light dashes work. And then, rather than take that top bungee, I take the bottom rail because that's just what I did. I don't remember if it's a natural reason. And then you can actually just barely make it to that rainbow boost. From there, you can use the height to get on this rail, which, again, rails make you faster than just running. And this one takes you to a boost ring, where you can ride to a ramp, which launches you essentially right into the exit. Keep in mind, even if not all the tasks are complete on the end of the level screens, I do still go on to complete whatever task is left over off screen. And all of the ones up to now have been completable. For this level, I will just let it explain itself by gameplay. As you probably noticed, I have been needing to maintain a constant pace. And it is actually rather strict, this level. Not strict, but if you screw up, you're more than likely not going to make the time. Overall, the basic rule of the no boost challenge is take springs and boost wherever you can get them. As this level in particular has a rather tight time of 1:15, which if you screw up the spring, you might be able to get a couple more attempts in before you actually run out of time if you played the rest of the level pretty well. Overall, 1-6. Easy and done. I am also skipping over all the failed attempts for a level, except for one that has some things I need to talk about. But this level we're looking at right now, despite being mostly a running level, its timer is lenient. And you get plenty of boost panels and all that to make up for the lack of a boost button. And also, it's the first time I actually learned that tanks can't just be destroyed by attacking the boss. A quick light dash to regain speed into a segment where you have a set speed for the entirety of it, and then a top route in order to get stuck on the tank. A rail into the boost, which launches you onto another rail much faster. Quick flip, or backflip, and then it's just the exit. This level had a time to beat of 1:25. So close, but also not at the same time. Now, a bit of rail tech I learned is that whenever you have two rails next to each other, especially on a downward slope, if you switch between them, they actually scale momentum upwards. So by switching between these two rails, my speed actually maintains a lot better. Because how rails work is your momentum going into them is added to the amount of momentum you had going forward already, because of how conversion for each individual momentum stat works. Now, I'm not any sort of coder or anything, so my answers may not be entirely accurate, so don't quote me on any of these things. But these are overall just the conclusions I came to through my playing. Now, for these helicopter springs, you actually don't want to spam them. You want to just leave them alone for a bit. Using that spring actually does save me a bit of crucial time for making it to the exit. A quick jump into a slot stomp allows me to close the downwards distance faster than just waiting for the fall to finish with it. But I would have started farther ahead if I had waited. So you do still have to make some decisions whenever you're deciding a route for your levels, but for the most part, you shouldn't have to worry about them. Now, I don't know about what the other rail holds, so it might be better, but for me, the rail I ended up on worked out. Alright, this level you're looking at right here is 2-7. And I spend a long time in the level just trying to see if it's even possible. Not going to spoil too much about it now, but I do not figure out how to beat this level quite yet. I do mess with my settings to try and see if I can brute force my way through the towers. And while I do get through the first falling platform on the alternate path, the main path I do not figure out yet. At least not the first tower. Both the routes have 2 falling platform sections that you have to complete, and only one of them is completable. At least by human hand. I do believe that this level is completable boostless with Taz, and it may very well be completable in a more capable player's hands. Now, knew there was a chance, but I decide to give up on the level for now. And the level immediately following is rail focused. Now, as I have mentioned, rails are your best friend when you're just trying to go fast. That does not mean they are always your best friend. For example, your rails could cost you your ability to make certain jumps. Now, because this is a portal stage, you don't really have the problem with your double jumps, as they seemingly fixed whatever issue in the overworld happens whenever you jump off of a rail inside of your portal levels. Which is actually why this level is completable, because if you could not do a double jump for a hot second, I do not believe most of these jumps would be feasible. Again, springs are actually something that you only want to use if you know where they're aimed, as obviously a spring is more often a one-way route. This next level focuses on the skateboard gimmick, but the skateboard is actually too slow. So instead I just use light dashes to slice through the section. Now unfortunately I do get caught on one of the skateboards, and you'll see exactly why I want to avoid them. Because I suck at using the skateboard. Now, if I had a light dash there, I might have actually kept more speed, but I wasn't too bothered with it. And as you can see, using the skateboard is actually more often than not slower. Just because not only does it have a similar speed to your running, but its friction is a lot more steadfast. So you aren't likely going to be able to get a cheeky ledge helping you move forward. Moving on to the next level, this level is actually more about precise platforming. And most platforming isn't affected by boosting, since they intend for you to be able to reach all the areas with some precision, so they leave them accessible without boosting so you can control your jump. And as you just saw, there is a bit of tech with the drop dash, where if you drop dash off of a flat platform, yes, this works with spin dash too, your momentum is kept a lot more. So rather than losing your drop dash momentum mere feet after initiating it, you get to hold on to that throughout the air. On top of that, if you have your double jump ready, you can use your double jump to also preserve your forward momentum in the air. And as you all have probably noticed, your jump height is also directly related to how fast you're moving and what angle you jump off of. For example, on those floating platforms, whenever they moved up, I had a higher jump. than normal, because I was already moving in an upwards direction, so gravity had to fight against that upwards momentum I already had, in addition to the jump momentum. Now these timed falling platforms aren't a problem because they have such generous timers. But they easily could have been problems if they were falling at the same pace we saw in 2-7. So I still didn't spend too long on them. Though these platforms do respawn, I believe. Although I never tested out because obviously that would require standing on a falling platform. Aside from a couple bad nick kills and balloons popped, there isn't really any necessary mention of a difficult section here. I mean, I get 2 taps, well no, I get hit by a mace, but then the level ends. And I believe I had quite a bit of time to spare as well. Yeah, 255. So this level, you should not have to worry about failing the S rank. And if you're wondering why I'm choosing to show the S ranks, it's because I figured those would be the hardest to achieve without boosting. Which did end up being correct. It was, in fact, harder to get the boost challenges out of the way rather than red ring, as most of the red rings are just littered along the route anyway, and don't usually have any restrictions as to how quickly you can collect them. Also, occasionally there is a weird interaction with drop dashes off of platforms, where you'll still have both your jumps available, so you'll actually be able to do a regular jump into a double jump despite literally floating in the air. While obviously it's not something I can use for my benefit, it is something I thought I'd mention, especially since it just happened. This level I did also have a slight bit of trouble with, just because I ended up missing a couple of early jumps and taking the wrong grab. But overall, it's not too tight of timing, so as long as you're paying attention, you should make it. This level is actually rather easy. And despite that fall, you will see that for the first ledge, you can just do a mid-air double jump to hold on to your speed. Then doing an edge jump allows you to clear that second gap without boosting. A well-timed double jump actually gives you a lot of air momentum as well, especially off of ramps and stuff. If you do a double jump while still going up, you gain a lot more height on your double jump. Now, I don't figure this out until the end of the level. But I figured it was something interesting to mention, as I did gradually improve on my Sonic Frontiers capabilities as I played. As you can see, that single boost panel allowed me to easily clear that entire jump. because you preserve your momentum if you double jump midair. Now, usually, whenever you perform a jump, your speed gets cut by a lot, even in portals. And while there is a setting that's supposed to lower the amount of deceleration you receive from jumping, you still aren't going to be keeping more than, like, a tick and a half of your speed bar at any one given time. I'm considering those larger markers as ticks, just for clarification. As you can see, this Sonic engine is insanely broken, as this level is a prime example of preserved momentum in action. As when the game wants me to be moving sideways, I am against a wall, and then continues that sideways movement. It is also just overall a good show of this, which is absolutely not a move I should have been able to pull off, but after a bit of patience, I am able to make it onto the second platform, yellow screen, into a boost panel, which takes you straight to the last section of the level, in which you'll want to take the rainbow ring, which will instantly shoot you into the exit, as well as give you the last red ring if you haven't got it. I do believe that we only have a couple more levels. This level, 4-7, is a quick time one with a tight schedule of about 35 seconds. In order to complete it, you do actually have to take some shortcuts, but even without boosting, you don't have to take all the shortcuts. As for the last main level in the main game, it's another heavy skateboarding one, though it already has a set expectation for how fast you will be going. And while obviously you might be able to go faster with boost, I honestly forgot because I spent so long without boosting, I've forgotten what it feels like to boost. Was I saying something? Anyway. This level was kind of annoying for the first red ring, but again, all the red rings are found, well, almost all of them are found in skateboarding section, so there wasn't any additional challenge to them. At least not boost related. Just a skill issue. Alright. 4-9 was the last of the main game that I will cover. And I do believe the alternate story can be skipped. And I will likely be skipping it. Because while, yes, I do love me a happy ending, we aren't here for that. We're here for a challenge.
Before you embark.
Alright, if you are unaware of what the alt story mode is, it is an alternate ending to the main game of Sonic Frontiers, where instead of just playing Sonic as you go across the final island, you instead play as Amy, Knuckles, and Tails for your main gameplay, with Sonic sections where he is busy trying to gather a whole lot of power. Instead of Chaos Emerald Vault keys, you'll have Lookout Coco, which can also be accessed through the levels. More on that a bit later. But each character has their own individual skill fragments and abilities. And Amy honestly has no good horizontal movement, but she is insanely cracked at just cheesing her way through all these challenges. So her skill points were very easy to access. As you can see, for the most part, you don't even have to actually do them. You can just homing attack to the end of the section. From there, you either get skill points or map fragment. Aside from that one, I won't bring too many up because they aren't necessary to the story. You can complete the entire thing without finding a single map or skill point. Well, actually, no, you do need Tails skill points. Because I believe the only way to access Tails' second Chaos Emerald requires his boost ability. As the plasma walls that protect it are unbreakable. I spent a hot minute attacking it with level 1 wrenches, which level 1 wrenches do 2 damage per wrench at level 1. Well, I just said level 1. Either way, I ended up getting a combo of roughly 1500, which would have equaled out to about 3000 damage. Which, obviously, if it were a thing you could defeat with your damage, 30,000 damage would have definitely done it, unless it has a regen over time, in which case I probably never even scratched it. In either case, the robot laser breaks it in about 11 hits, and last I checked it doesn't do insane amounts of damage, so I do believe it's just checking for a specific type of damage rather than anything else. Anyways, here's me just showing off a bit more of Amy's ability to absolutely ignore the need for anything important while just getting a seed of power. And here's the insane part about Amy. Her speed is connected directly to her speed while gliding with her cards is directly attached to the speed when she leaves a platform, at much less speed reduction than anything else. So despite the fact that I just ran off this section, I didn't have to do a single bit of the intended route in order to reach Amy's Chaos Emerald. I just literally used Knuckles' section to clear Amy's. Speaking of Knuckles, we'll go ahead and get on to it. Anyway, Knuckles' movement option for going fast forward is his glide, and his abilities are actually much more aligned with a no boost challenge, as there is a way to gain at least some height and all of that. For the most part though, what I focus on getting is the infinite glide, which basically maxes out your movement speed as Knuckles while going forward and maintaining your height. Obviously, it's unnecessary to get this, but it definitely helps. At least whenever you're doing what I'm doing and clearing the entire island without boosting. Which, yes, was extremely tedious, but I did not care. Also, the rough scaling of skill points to actual action skill points you can use is 600 skill pieces for 1 skill point. And then you don't often actually have to use any abilities to get to these Coco, especially if you just glide down from high enough. Anyway, you get the Knuckles jab combo, which is a prime example of gravity multiplying its effect over time. As you saw, I gathered a bit of height, about equal to over a double jump, and then I started falling down after each combo. Because while parrying your momentum upwards is halted, it is still doing the calculations for gravity, I believe. Then doing this mess of a puzzle to unlock another bit of the map, before going to get more skill points. Don't worry, eventually I got the infinite glide. But it costs like 40 or 50 points. And here's me choosing another one of these puzzles with Knuckles. Now, the alt story mode characters, Knuckles, Amy, and Tails, all have much shorter parry durations, likely because at this point they expect you to have a decent bit of skill with parrying, but Sonic's is still 15 seconds long. You can parry for a solid 15 seconds, but that does get shrunk down in the Master Trials. Anyway, Knuckles is just going to keep being goated as he runs through his sections. As you can see, he's having no trouble crushing his challenges without a single boost, because he's used to gliding around at such insane speeds, he actually outruns Sonic EXE maps. I don't know if you guys have seen the Spirits of Hell video I made, but I ended up deciding to just complete the true ending as my first ever ending I officially completed for Spirits of Hell, and on my full proof video, I believe I had some meme deaths where I just absent-mindedly glided Knuckles into the ether, which does in fact show a funny little Knuckles got through Act 2. Of course, I also managed to drown Knuckles inside of You Can't Run. As for Tails, most of his movement is related to his tails. Who would have guessed? He actually can cheese his levels, despite the fact that, you know, you'd expect Sega to have thought about Tails obviously flying over his levels, which they obviously did think a little bit about, given the fact that they made these walls so high. But you absolutely do not have to play this challenge by the rules at all. It's very easy to just land on a wall like so, and then you can just fly over the wall. But because I didn't know what I was going into, I decided to break this wall so I could actually see what I was doing, then figure out I needed to pile drive it. Then, because there's nothing else interesting there, here's Sonic failing a puzzle a few times at about 10 times speed. Don't worry, Sonic, you got this. Just keep throwing yourself at the problem and eventually it'll crack. There we go. Anyway, on to the important tower trial. This is a wall-related challenge. And it actually did... I did think it was going to pose a bit of a threat, especially when the rail showed a large gap I'd have to fill, but I didn't have to even think about it because I could homing attack the wall that was meant to be an obstacle. So instead of having to figure out how in the world I was meant to clear such a gap from a rail, I just continued on playing mindlessly, because at this point, playing without boosting had become boring. Because there hasn't really been too many challenges. Alright, here, let me show you. Not a single one of these goals is related to actually completing the level in itself. And that's about all the importance of those levels. While a couple of them you can reach the ending without boosting, the issue comes in that you can't really complete any of the extra challenges because they do intend for you to go to the secret goals for the remainder of those challenges. I don't know by how much they intend for you to do it, but they do. As for this tower in Trial, unfortunately, this jump may be impossible, just because it's not possible for you to gain enough speed to get high enough to reach this spring/bungee thing. And even if not for that, if you do manage to get past it, you have this monstrosity. Which, yes, with a boost would be rather easy. But since I don't have boosting, I just turn it to easy mode. And this is why I count easy mode as boosting, as you literally don't have to think any of this out. I don't even bother turning it off until I reach the top. Just because that is how mindless it was. I literally forgot that I had it on. Anyway, that's just about the end of that. Back onto Amy, Knuckles, and Tails. And I will go ahead and mention Amy's Hard Stomp, because that is just about all she's got going for her. Essentially, it allows her to attack like Sonic does with the regular Stomp, except whenever you hold the button, you activate a much higher jump, which, as you may have figured out, giving Amy access to an even higher jump when she could already cheese a good half of the challenges with just a normal jump and double jump, kinda breaks the game for her. So she has literally no issues in any challenges, so we'll just go back to Knuckles, which at this point, I had unlocked the Infinite Glide.
This is what Sonic was suffering from. Handling the Coco is affecting me the same way. Well, too bad. They need me.
Alright, after Amy's sentimental note. Just gonna skip through these
Hey, kid,
because I'm bored.
focus.
I'm so ready to just get this over and done with. And I will just immediately cut straight to the impact form. Impact forms are quick time, easy ones. So after doing that same thing again, because the Infinite Glide is broken, so broken, even though I fumble my glide here, I don't even need to worry about it because I literally maintain my height for all eternity. And even when I miss this platform, I can just turn back to the wall. Slide down it, hit the boost panel, and I'm right back to where I fell off. And this time I know not to move. And then I can just glide. Honestly, I probably didn't even need to worry about it, but I didn't know that, so I just did this instead. I don't know how speed affects Knuckles' climbing whenever he goes in, but it possibly speeds him up upon initial climbing, but his climbing speed is pretty good already, so I'm not too worried about it. So I just speed up this other impact form and then we move on to the Chaos Emerald, which was, again, very easy. Especially since I start from up high. Although this is the one time where I regret having the Infinite Glide, and I definitely could have fixed that. Because here, I have to drop down a specific amount to make sure I don't miss the spring. Now, of course, I don't actually regret too badly about not having it, but it definitely did not help me in this specific case. And then, because the glide is literally just too overpowered, I have to do a drill punch in order to not die. Then Tails deals with Coco devices. Don't ask me why I got hit there. I just completely forgot I needed to do anything. So instead I just spammed Tails' wrenches, and yes, the sound effect did annoy me, but it was a necessary sacrifice. The next one, I just cheesed through. And then Chaos Emerald. And yes, that is the Chaos Emerald. I had expected to need the boost ability for on Tails, but I found out that I wasn't in the right location. So, yeah, no. No problems. Although, I do have to add another boost here because it is straight up impossible to complete this jump without easy mode. But I do remember to turn it off this time. Not that that makes this really difficult. In fact, the rest of this tower is easy. The only hard part is also the only impossible part. After falling off there, I had to climb back up, if you're wondering. I ended up accidentally boosting, which caused me to fall halfway down. Also, yes, I know I could easily have used the V-Bots to homing attack and make it all the way over, but I didn't want to do that. Because I figure if it's there, I probably need it later. And attacking these cannonballs actually was a lot slower than anything else. So I just ignore the second cannon. And Sonic doesn't even have to worry about these ones. Like, I could just use them to get up, but again, I don't really need to. The platforming is easy enough to where the cannonballs aren't even a threat or helping me. They're kind of just there. Again, floating platforms, you'll want to jump off while they're moving upwards if you want a higher jump. You don't always need the higher jump, but a higher jump doesn't usually hinder you. Now here, I react way too slowly and get launched off. But I do get back on and get back up here, which fighting against the current actually works out. And I get to this little pillar of floating blocks. Then we get on to another running section. And this jump, you do actually have to use some cannonballs in order to make it. I mean, you'd make it without if you had access to a boost, but I didn't, so I just used the cannons. Of course, if you don't want to destroy the cannons as well, you can always use a parry to stop your homing attack, I believe. Well, not your homing attack, but you can always use it to stall mid-air. I do use a couple homing attacks on the cannonballs here and there, just to be sure I'm actually landing where I want to. Here I tried to go against the flow of the platforms again, but find that it's way too slow and just ride it out. Until I realize I need to get onto one of the cannonball firers. Now, while I could destroy more cannons, I don't know if I'll need to use more in order to get back up, so I end up not destroying any further. And here, I don't actually need to use them in the slightest. In fact, they kind of make me have to think for a second. Again, don't destroy the cannon because those only respawn at night, and I don't want to wait for that. Alright, there's another challenge completed. In fact, that's actually the Master King right there. And here I'll actually show you the full kills for these titans, because their HP is reduced and I need to perfect parry in order to parry. Which means I need to be a lot more strategic about my decisions about when to actually parry. I also figured out that you can just use your momentum from those boost pulses or whatever they are to just boost yourself forward. And it takes roughly 4 cyclones in order to max out your quick Psyloop bar. And while that's unnecessary in order to Psyloop a boss, I actually am somewhat embarrassed to say I did not know you could Psyloop normally inside of Supersonic form. So instead, let me show you just me melting his HP bar. Now, by not side-looping him back to the ground, I actually avoid an extra attack he gets before his transformation, which also saves me from having to worry about getting back to him in case I get hit by a set attack. Now, Phase 2 does bring the problematic attack from the grave, where he blasts me. And here's my master strategy for it. Just tank it. Fighting against it, especially on hard mode, drains your rings much more than just taking the attack. You lose maybe 10 rings on your way back to Giganto after waiting for it to finish. And then just parry this attack, and you got your win. Now that was actually very quick. Now annoyingly, my Wyvern inside of the Master Trial got kind of bugged. In which I mean that whenever I went for some attacks, Sonic would just suddenly lose his tracking of Wyvern despite being literally on top of it. So I'd end up having these instances of periods where I wasn't able to attack. Luckily, I was able to get past this and beat this, but it was not by any means a short battle. And in fact, it required quite a bit of skill in order to beat it before I ran out of rings. I will go ahead and state just for the fact that none of this intro stuff changes for any of them. In fact, their battles overall remain the same aside from the perfect parrying you have to do in order to parry their attacks. I just thought it'd be more interesting to watch them back to back like they are here. Especially since it didn't take me 10 minutes to beat each of them. By the way, the Wyvern's trail does not disintegrate faster than you run, so that's why I didn't mention it at all. It sets your speed. So I don't even know if it's possible to beat this faster than intended. I don't even know if boosting does anything here. But all I do know is it's completable without boosting. Aside from that, I don't really care. And as you all just witnessed, it is not even necessary to hit every single one of the enemies on the track. You can jump past quite a few of them. Which does actually make things go a bit faster, so you can slightly speed up this section, but just avoid getting hit more than you're worried about going fast. As in this, you do not have any defense, so you will lose over 200 rings and essentially have to be forced to restart if you take any damage here. Remember, these missiles do attack rather quickly, and they can come out of the blue, so you have to be very active on those block buttons. Now, I do have to build back up my bar, so I do have to use this a couple of times, but it's overall better to wait to use your Psyloop. anyway, because while you do more damage with the Psyloop active, once it breaks out of the Psyloop, it'll immediately run away. But if you chain that Psyloop after attacking, sometimes you get the full Psyloop timer on top of the original stun. Anyway, half HP bar is very much similar to the full HP bar Missile Strikes. There is no special dodging or anything you need to worry about. In fact, you want to be close to the missiles, just not this close. You do get a few chances, and you can actually catch up with boosting, but obviously I can't boost. And getting hit is actually hazardous, because it very easily makes you lose dozens of seconds, especially if the missiles end up missing you. As you can see, I missed that one claw and ended up losing roughly 20 to 30 rings there. Now, as you probably noticed, that's the tail strike I was talking about. And this brings us over to the quick time missiles. Basically just more free hits into a tail swipe, which I do not block because those tails are extremely annoying to parry. So I have to wait for more missiles. And at this point I have lost 140-ish rings, which roughly translates to 150 seconds now of just this boss. Now, when you do miss the Wyvern cycle because of a missile, it does not knock you back for it, so you do get an additional chance. That is not something you should be trying to waste. So, do absolutely rag on this Wyvern. In fact, if you can manage, you'll want to get it to this. And then, just for the fun of it, I finish it off with the Grand Slam. Which actually leads to the cinematic final cutscene, which I do not fail this time, believe it or not. As they make these final mashing sections a lot easier in order to compensate for them being the end of fight. And since you only have so much time before the super form runs out, you don't have all day to spend trying to mash 100 times a second. That brings us over to the night fight. Now, for the night, you're immediately going to want to just pray. Really know what you believe, but you're praying to RNG that you don't get hit here. Because it is completely just possible you get just sniped by those spikes. Now, these spikes come out on time cycles, so you can just get to these rails, which take you up the Knight's body. And then a smarter man would wall run up this, but yes, good old-fashioned climbing for me, at least. Funny enough, he doesn't actually fight back in the slightest, despite probably being totally able to see me climb up his chest right now. But hey, easier for me. I do try to cheese myself a couple of extra hits, which actually does work out for me as it allows me to get a very early shield. And cutscenes are some of your best friends here. Like, obviously parries are just good in general because they allow you to land a whole lot of hits for free. And then you want to finish off with the Grand Slam since it does a whole bunch of damage at once. And after getting lucky, more so than not, I deal some damage, and I can stomp his head a million times. Psyloop in order to bring him up, do it again, bring the sword down from the heavens, and just build that Psyloop bar back up and stomp his head into oblivion. You see why I think Stomp's a bit OP here, right? It does about equal damage to your Grand Slam, but you can use like 6 or 7 of them in the same stun you'd be able to use a Grand Slam in. So it's overall just more worthwhile to go for the Stomp rather than the Grand Slam, which does feel kind of backwards if you understand where I'm coming from. Like, it just feels slightly strange. This time I know I'm not going to land it, so I want to just toss it. And if I parry it, I parry it. If I don't, I don't. Right now, I am kind of panicking about my ring situation, because I'm expecting another boss. And obviously, the less rings I have for that other boss, the worse I am. But there's nothing I can really do, aside from hope I land. Which I do manage, which I don't actually know how I manage that. What I do know is that I get slammed into a wall. And then he goes back to this, where I have to parry his shield again, fail that, twice. Then I actually get it, but I'm too slow. No, I actually did manage it. Anyway, another couple side loops, just for the fun of it. And this is the Grand Slam for the night. Now again, more often than not, it's more worthwhile to use anything other than the Grand Slam, as you'll do more damage that way, but I hadn't used the Grand Slam, so I wanted to. And I immediately get knocked into a wall for doing it. Honestly, fair enough. I definitely could have parried more attacks and, you know, finished these fights a lot faster, but perfect parries are not easy to land. I mean, I guess that's why they're called perfect parries, but... I do manage to put an end to this. And the good news is that the Master Trial only includes the first 30 bosses. If it did include Supreme, I would have been absolutely done for. But it didn't, so I did not have to spend a million years on this. Sound of victory. Anyways, I do suppose after this we'll be moving on to the end merging with Supreme in order to pull out the time to face off. Now this is actually the first time I'll ever beat this boss, so I didn't actually know what I was supposed to be doing. I know, shocker, I don't really know how to counter Supreme, and I don't know how to counter the end when it's controlled. What I do know is that oddly you cannot attack the plug with your combat skills. Like you can't stomp on it with your combo. You can only use normal attacks on it.
Oh, yeah?
From here, I just jumped straight into Supreme the next day, because I had ran out of time. I know, shocker, I don't play it for all eternity. Also, if you're wondering what happened to my stats, this is the alt story, so the nighttime rarely brings a comet storm, which just gives you absurd levels of Coco and seeds. And because it was the alt story, I wasn't really worried about my stats since they don't transfer over to the main story. Not that I had any of the main story left to complete anyway at this point. But I do get to actually show off properly fighting off a Supreme attack. Which very quickly puts an end to Phase 1. Now, this fight is very much the same Supreme fight. Again, I just know how to counter it slightly better at this point, so it goes by faster. But I still end up spending a good amount of rings on it. And again, now I only have to destroy one of those pillars. And yes, that is why I did not, in fact, dodge that attack, because now I know what I need, or what I want to do. I'm just trying not to attack Supreme in the process anymore. And for whatever reason, it just did not want to target the little totem things it's got shooting orbs at me with. But that does allow me to purposefully trigger this sniper attack. Which of course I can easily dodge, and then just end the fight. Because again, Stomp is OP. dodge in order to get onto its neck. But Supersonic actually isn't allowed to do damage here. Especially not without boosting. As you can see, I barely made V-Drive, so I have to turn into the Cyber Corruption power-up, which does allow me to perfect parry these attacks. But again, I don't very much like the perfect parries. Luckily, they do give me a bit of extra damage in return for actually doing them successfully, but I gotta do them successfully. Which, when you got trees in your way, it's kinda hard. Trust me, they do get in the way. After that, I take out the plug, which allows me to actually do some more damage. And then I, you know, get dragged into this scene, which makes it very hard to see. Don't ask me what happened there, I don't know. What I can tell you is, I understood how to beat it by the attempt you're seeing. This is actually like my second attempt. Took me forever to figure out I needed to get the gun out. And this is the only time I ever legitimately use a Psyloop inside a Supersonic form. Like, that's my first time ever. And I need to do that twice. Also, you do kinda need to parry that attack. I don't know what happens if you don't. But it's better not to chance it. And then I use this one, this Grand Slam, which is definitely good for damage. Though I don't know if it was worth it over getting the gun out again. Now here, you get forced down to 100 range, putting you on a strict timer. I don't know what happened to my max ring count. Could just be a issue with the buggy, or the coding. And don't ask me what is happening to the game right now. I am just as confused as you guys are. Now, running the thing out of HP actually just causes you to win after you pull the gun out. I don't know why. But I assume it has something to do with Eggman not being ready to do anything. But luckily, you get to just absolutely own Supreme here. Punch it into the moon. And then you just get into the gun. Now, since the end is soon to come, I will go ahead and start mentioning things like that. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and like it. Enjoy my rare content. Subscribe, so you know when I actually do things like this. And leave comments to also help it in the algorithm. And overall, just tell me what you want me to do. And I'll go ahead and start playing the paint I had with 1-2 and 2-7. While Eggman's just launching me at the moon. Wait, Eggman actually destroys 2 moons. I never thought of this before. Anyway, I got distracted. So obviously, 2-1 is a very, very difficult level. Or sorry, 1-2 is very difficult time-wise. As while it requires you to beat the level in 55 seconds, you have to have techiest tech I've ever seen in Sonic Frontiers at the very least, in order to beat it without losing. And still get the essence. And it is no joke that I spent more than 20 hours on it.
Look,
In fact, I
there
had
he
to
is.
look up videos myself to verify that it was even feasible to beat the level. Because I wasn't even getting close with my original attempt. Just for reference, my first clears didn't even breach the minute time. Let alone the 55-second time. Then, once I actually saw what I had to do, it still took me attempt after attempt to actually successfully do it. I attempted it so many times, in fact, I caused the level music to stop
You did.
playing.
Well, Sage, it's time to head home, dear daughter.
Yes, I don't know exactly how that works, but I played the
like the
level
sound of
so
that.
many times just hitting retry that I broke the music. Anyways, here's the S rank that took me almost a day's worth of gameplay to get. And after this is 2-7. Now, 2-7 is a level with falling platforms, as you saw earlier. I spent an hour in this level just attempting to clear the glitch that actually allows you to beat the level. Because the only way to beat 2-7 without boosting is to take the alternate route, abuse the spring, like watch. You have to abuse the momentum in order to make the jump, and then you have to get so lucky that you not only avoid the trigger for the falling platforms, but you get on here, onto the spiral platform. Once you get on here, of course, you can just follow it, but you end up getting forced down the first time, so you'll have to be careful. And only then can you beat the level. Now, I don't know if it's clear to you, but that's not easy. But with that, I don't actually have any more on this challenge. I did not complete an S rank because that would be way too skill heavy. Funnily enough, this level has the only red ring you cannot collect in the entire game. And it's because you have to follow the main route. And while yes, I was able to beat the first falling platform section and collect the red ring without boosting, the second one requires such precise jumping in order to preserve your drop dash momentum that I'm pretty sure it's only completable by taps. In fact, if I can find where the footage is in the hours of footage I got, I'll probably pull it up here. Just to show you guys that while you can get up here, it is not very hopeful for completing the level in any legitimate way. Not by human hand. aside from that, I'll go ahead and wrap this up, and all of you have a good day.